Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. From the moment I married Alex, it felt like I had inherited not only a husband, but also a shadow in the form of his mother, Beatrice. She criticized everything from the way I dressed to how I managed our finances. Alex never had to worry about money when he was with me, she'd often say, hinting that I was some sort of drain on her son's resources. Every family dinner, she'd find a way to highlight my inadequacies. The meat was always too dry, or the vegetables not seasoned enough. But what hurt most was the way she belittled my parenting. In my days, children knew their manners, she'd comment, glaring at our kids. The evening light dimmed, casting long, somber shadows on the walls of our home. The sound of clinking dishes echoed in the background, with Alex and I trying to salvage the remnants of the day. As I scraped leftover food into the trash, I noticed Beatrice's purse left carelessly on our living room couch. Before I could think, an irrational curiosity took hold. The small, tan purse seemed so innocuous, yet held so much power over my life. I approached it cautiously, feeling like an intruder in my own home. Tentatively, I opened it, revealing a haphazard collection of items: lipstick, a folded newspaper, a pair of reading glasses. But what caught my attention was a small, tattered notebook, its pages filled with a meticulous script. I flipped it open to a random page. To my horror, it was a list, dated, detailed, and categorically dissecting every event, every gathering we'd had. There were comments on my appearance: hair could use a touch-up, critiques on our home, too modern, lacks warmth, even disparaging remarks about Jamie's school grades. It was a manual of critiques, a guidebook of all my perceived inadequacies. My heart raced, my palms grew sweaty. This wasn't just casual observation. This was an obsession. Suddenly, footsteps echoed. Beatrice had returned, her sharp eyes immediately zoning in on me holding her notebook. Our eyes met, an unspoken battle of wills. Her face contorted with rage. "How dare you invade my privacy," she seethed. Before I could react, she snatched the notebook from me, clutching it tightly to her chest. The room was thick with tension, both of us waiting for the other to break the silence. Alex, hearing the commotion, rushed into the room, his face a mask of confusion. "What's going on?" he demanded, his eyes darting between the two of us. Beatrice composed herself quickly, her demeanor shifting to one of wounded dignity. "Your wife," she began, her voice dripping with venom, "decided to go through my personal belongings." Alex looked at me, searching for an explanation. I was at a loss for words, caught in the act, yet desperate for him to understand the depth of Beatrice's intrusion into our lives. The clock ticked loudly, each second stretching agonizingly. Beatrice, sensing an upper hand, began to pack her things, her movements deliberate and slow. "I think I've overstayed my welcome," she said, her voice cold and controlled. As she moved to leave, I finally found my voice. "Beatrice," I began, my voice shaking, "why do you do this? Why can't you just let us be?" She paused at the door, not turning around. "Because Alex deserves better," she replied, the finality in her voice leaving no room for argument. And with that, she left, leaving a chilling void in her wake. The weight of the evening's events bore down on me, and I felt a strange mix of guilt, anger, and desperation. Our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. And this was only the beginning. The phone rang at least twice a day. It was always Beatrice, always with some advice or pointed question. "Did you remember to send David's science project?" Or, "Make sure Ella doesn't eat too many sweets." I often wondered if she kept a checklist of all my supposed shortcomings. Alex tried to be supportive, but he was caught between the two most important women in his life. When I vented to him, he'd sigh, "She's just set in her ways. Try not to let it get to you." But how could I not? It felt like she was everywhere, from the constant calls to the surprise visits where she'd just drop by with some leftovers, only to inspect our home and point out its flaws. The days seemed to stretch endlessly, each dawn bringing with it the trepidation of what Beatrice's next move would be. The shadows of early morning would often find me lying awake, watching the ceiling and dreading the intrusive ring of the phone. One Tuesday, when the sun hung lazily in the sky and the world seemed to have paused momentarily, I came across an unfamiliar package on our front doorstep. A heavy, meticulously wrapped box with my name elegantly scrawled on it in cursive handwriting I recognized all too well. Opening the package in the safety of our kitchen, I discovered an ornate porcelain vase, its exterior painted with intricate floral patterns, and a small note that read, "Every proper home needs a touch of elegance. B." I stared at the vase, its weight both physical and emotional, and felt an odd combination of gratitude and resentment. As beautiful as it was, the vase was yet another symbol of Beatrice's incessant meddling, a silent yet glaring reminder of her omnipresent critique. Later that evening, as Alex, Jamie, and I sat down for dinner, the doorbell rang, shattering the serene atmosphere. Alex shot me a knowing look before rising from his chair. Through the hazy curtains, I could see the silhouette of Beatrice, clad in her signature long coat and pearls, her posture upright and commanding. She didn't wait for an invitation. "Good evening," she announced, striding into our living room, her eyes darting around, undoubtedly taking mental notes for later critique. "I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to see how the vase fits." Before I could protest, she was already rearranging our living room, moving our books and family photos, making room for the new centerpiece. Jamie, sensing the tension, retreated to his room, while Alex and I watched in paralyzed astonishment. Suddenly, the vase slipped. Time seemed to slow as it plummeted towards the ground. But with surprising agility, Beatrice caught it, inches from disaster. Her face was ashen, the facade momentarily shattered. "Such a close call," she whispered, clutching the vase to her chest. A tense silence enveloped the room. It was then that I noticed something odd, a tiny folded paper tucked inside the vase. My curiosity piqued, I discreetly retrieved it when Beatrice was busy setting the vase on a table. The note was unsettling: "Be wary of shadows, for not all mean well." The handwriting was not Beatrice's. Confused and anxious, I pocketed the note. Who could have written such a warning? And what did it mean? The evening wore on, Beatrice eventually leaving after what felt like hours, but the unease lingered. That night, as Alex and I lay in bed, the weight of the unspoken words between us palpable, I showed him the mysterious note. His face paled. "I don't understand," he murmured. "Why would someone place this in the vase? And why warn us about shadows?" Neither of us had answers, but the seed of suspicion was sown. Beatrice's daily interferences were no longer just annoyances. They were potentially dangerous, woven into a tapestry of intrigue that threatened to ensnare us all. The days that followed the vase incident felt surreal, like we were living inside a suspense novel. The note haunted me. Every creak of the floorboards or rustle outside the window sent my heart racing. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I reached out to a friend, Lara, who was skilled in analyzing handwriting. Without mentioning Beatrice, I asked her to compare the note's script with some of Beatrice's writing that I had kept from her many letters. A few days later, Lara called, her voice tinged with concern. "The handwriting from the note isn't Beatrice's, but it's oddly familiar," she said. "It reminds me of something from our past, but I can't put my finger on it." The revelation was both a relief and a new concern. If not Beatrice, then who? And why? One evening, while Alex was playing with Jamie, I decided to examine the vase more closely. As I turned it over in my hands, feeling its cool, smooth surface, I noticed a tiny inscription at the bottom: "To Beatrice, with love, M." M? My mind raced. The only M I could think of from Beatrice's past was Margaret, Beatrice's estranged sister. They'd had a falling out years ago over family matters, and from what Alex had shared, it had been a bitter separation. Suddenly, things started falling into place. The note wasn't a threat, it was a warning. But from whom? Beatrice or Margaret? The next morning, I confronted Beatrice, vase and note in hand. Her face paled as she read the message. "Margaret," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. She tried to warn me, but I never listened. It turned out Margaret had discovered something sinister in their shared past, something that could endanger Beatrice and anyone close to her. The vase was her way of reaching out, of trying to mend bridges and protect her sister. As Beatrice and I sat, the weight of the revelation heavy between us, our relationship began to shift. While the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: we needed to unite against the shadows of the past, for the sake of our family's future. Ella's 10th birthday approached, and while we planned a simple, intimate celebration, Beatrice insisted on buying her a special gift. On the big day, a massive, beautifully wrapped box arrived. Ella, with sparkling eyes, tore the wrapping apart to reveal a deluxe baking set. Ella was ecstatic. She loved baking and often said she wanted to be a chef. That evening, she insisted on baking a batch of cookies using her new set. As Ella mixed and rolled, Beatrice whispered in my ear, "See, I know what she needs. She's so much like Alex." The seasons shifted subtly, the crisp fall air heralding the impending celebration of Ella's 10th birthday. The trees outside our home stood tall and resplendent in hues of red and gold, and the excitement in our household was palpable. Every child dreams of hitting the double digits, and Ella was no exception. One afternoon, as I was sorting out the invitations for her birthday party, a delicately wrapped box arrived, ornate and enticing. The card attached read, "For Ella, on her special day. Love, Grandma B. Beatrice." Always one for grand gestures. Given the recent revelations, I was hesitant. My fingers traced the intricate patterns on the wrapping paper, and a shiver ran down my spine. Margaret's warning still echoed in my mind. I decided to carefully open the gift, telling myself it was just a precaution. Inside was a beautifully crafted model train, each car connected with the finest of details. At first glance, it seemed like the perfect gift. But as I examined it more closely, something felt off. The wheels of the engine were unusually tight, and a strange odor wafted from the cars. Curiosity piqued, I unscrewed the base of the engine. To my horror, I found a small pouch filled with crushed nuts, peanuts to be exact. Ella had a severe peanut allergy, something Beatrice was well aware of. Even a slight contact could send her into anaphylactic shock. The gravity of what I held in my hands was overwhelming. Was this a cruel oversight or something far more sinister? A macabre thought crossed my mind. Had Beatrice, in her twisted worldview, seen this as a way to free Alex from the chains of family? The doorbell rang, shattering my dark reverie. Beatrice stood there, a bouquet of flowers in hand, her face an inscrutable mask. "I just wanted to drop these off for Ella's birthday," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. Summoning every ounce of self-control, I thanked her and quickly shut the door, my heart pounding. What game was she playing? That evening, I shared my discovery with Alex, showing him the tainted train. The color drained from his face, replaced by a mixture of anger and disbelief. "We need to confront her," he whispered, determination lighting his eyes. "This is too much." While the plan was to address Beatrice after Ella's birthday to avoid any scenes, fate had other ideas. On the day of the party, Beatrice arrived unexpectedly, her presence immediately casting a shadow over the celebrations. She glanced around the room, her eyes finally landing on the absent model train. "Where's my gift for Ella?" she inquired, her voice edged with a challenge. I glanced at Alex, his jaw set. "We thought it wasn't suitable," he replied cautiously. A knowing smirk played on Beatrice's lips, her gaze never leaving mine. "Did you not like it? Or did you find something unexpected?" The room grew tense, the partygoers sensing the undercurrent of hostility. As the music played and children laughed, a silent battle of wills raged between Beatrice and us, a dance as old as time, where every move, every glance held untold significance. And as the party continued, the weight of the unspoken truths threatened to crush us all. Hours later, Ella was gasping for breath. Her face was swollen, and she was breaking out in hives. Panic gripped me as I recognized the signs of an allergic reaction. We had always been cautious about her severe nut allergies, ensuring she never came into contact with them. As I administered her EpiPen and called 911, Beatrice frantically checked the baking set. There, in fine print on the back of the chocolate chip packet, it read, "May contain traces of nuts." The trip to the hospital was a blur. Beatrice, for once, was silent. She sat, pale-faced, wringing her hands, realizing the gravity of her oversight. The frantic drive to the hospital was a blur of flashing streetlights and the haunting wail of our car's horn. Memories of Ella's infectious laughter, her tiny hands gripping ours, and the twinkle in her eyes threatened to be overshadowed by the terrifying possibility of losing her. As we skidded to a stop outside the emergency room, a whirlwind of activity greeted us. The usual muted hues of the hospital seemed sharper, more vivid in our heightened state of anxiety. Doctors and nurses moved with purpose, their hushed conversations punctuated by the occasional urgent shout. Alex and I approached the reception, our voices shaking. "Our daughter, Ella. We were told she was brought here. Where is she?" The receptionist, her face a mask of professional sympathy, quickly checked her system. Room 207. Please be prepared. Her condition is serious. The hospital's sterile smell seemed more pungent as we raced down the corridor. Through the window of room 207, I caught a glimpse of our precious Ella, looking so small amidst the tangle of tubes and wires. The once familiar hum of the heart monitor now sounded an alarm, echoing our worst fears. Inside, doctors surrounded her, their movements precise and their faces etched with concern. Dr. Martinez, known in our town for his expertise with pediatric emergencies, walked over. Ella has had a severe anaphylactic reaction, he began. We believe she ingested something with peanuts. We've managed to stabilize her for now, but she's not out of the woods. As we grappled with the news, a surprising face appeared in the doorway. Robert, Beatrice's seldom-seen brother. I got here as soon as I could, he murmured, his eyes darting towards Beatrice, who lingered in the background. From his pocket, he produced a wrinkled note, handing it to Alex with a grave expression. Alex's hands trembled as he read the hastily scribbled words, "You might want to double-check those chocolate chips." The sinister implication was clear. Were the chocolate chips Beatrice had given Ella laced with peanuts? The atmosphere grew heavy with whispered conversations, accusations, and the underlying dread of not knowing Ella's fate. But before we could confront Beatrice or make sense of the note, alarms blared. Ella's vitals, displayed on the monitor, plummeted. The room buzzed with activity, doctors shouting orders, nurses rushing in with equipment. "We're losing her," someone yelled. The intensity of the moment was suffocating. As the medical team fought valiantly to stabilize Ella, the chilling reality of family betrayals and dark secrets loomed over us, demanding answers. As days turned into nights and nights back into days, the hospital became a cauldron of whispered allegations, furtive glances, and palpable tension. The corridors echoed with a mix of hushed conversations and the resolute steps of medical professionals. But in the midst of it all was the silent but looming presence of Beatrice, like a shadow that refused to dissipate. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Robert approached Alex and me, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. "There's something you both need to see," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Leading us to a secluded waiting room, he pulled out a small leather-bound book from his bag. "It's Beatrice's diary," he murmured. As we thumbed through the pages, the words painted a chilling picture of obsession and envy. Entries detailed Beatrice's disdain for me, her perceived slights from Alex, and an unnerving fixation on Ella. But it was an entry dated a week before Ella's incident that made our blood run cold. "They all adore Ella. But they'll see. They'll all see." Disturbed, we looked up at Robert, who seemed to be battling with his own demons. "She wasn't always like this," he confessed. "Our childhood, it was complicated. But this is unthinkable." The revelations of the diary only intensified the atmosphere in the hospital. Relatives picked sides. Accusations flew. And a cloud of distrust hung in the air. Amidst the chaos, Margaret, Beatrice's childhood friend, shared her own insights, hinting at past traumas that might have shaped Beatrice's deranged mindset. One evening, as I was leaving Ella's room to get some coffee, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Beatrice. Her usual cold demeanor was replaced with a manic energy. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her face contorted in rage. "You think that diary proves anything?" Before I could react, she lunged at me, her fingers aiming for my throat. The world spun as we tumbled to the ground, her nails digging into my skin. I fought back, adrenaline fueling my strength, managing to push her off momentarily. The hospital's dim lighting cast eerie shadows, making Beatrice appear even more unhinged. From down the corridor, Alex heard the commotion and rushed to my aid, pulling Beatrice off me. Hospital security was alerted, and within moments, they were restraining her, her shrieks echoing throughout the building. The altercation wasn't without witnesses. Patients, staff, and visitors gathered, forming a crowd of horrified onlookers. The incident, combined with the diary's contents, turned public opinion sharply against Beatrice. Days later, as Ella's condition began to improve, a sense of hope permeated the gloomy hospital environment. But even as we celebrated small victories, like Ella's first conscious smile or her gradual return to speech, the presence of Beatrice's dark legacy was inescapable. Late one night, Robert visited our room, a grim expression on his face. In his hands, he held a small box. "I found this at Beatrice's," he began hesitantly. "It's filled with old photographs and letters. I think it might hold answers, or at least give context to her actions." As we delved into the box, its contents unveiled a tapestry of family secrets, betrayals, and tragedies. Each piece seemed to hint at deeper, darker mysteries yet to be unraveled. The hospital, a place of healing, had become a theater of confrontations, revelations, and battles, both physical and emotional. As Ella's strength returned, so did our resolve to uncover the truth, confront the demons of the past, and ultimately, break free from Beatrice's toxic grasp. Ella recovered. But the event was a turning point. I sat Alex down, my fears and frustrations pouring out. "We can't live like this anymore. She almost killed our daughter." Alex, his face ashen, agreed. We decided on boundaries. Beatrice was confronted. And for the first time, Alex firmly stood up to her, laying out rules and consequences. While she protested, she knew she had overstepped. The phone calls decreased. The surprise visits stopped. Beatrice was still a part of our lives, but on our terms. It took a near tragedy, but we reclaimed our family from the shadows of unnecessary advice and criticism. Life was finally ours again.